The Middle East, a region synonymous with volatility, was once again thrown into chaos on October 7, 2023. Hamas, the militant group controlling the Gaza Strip, launched a surprise attack on Israel. This audacious assault, characterized by a barrage of rockets and ground incursions, marked a dangerous escalation in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. The world watched in shock as images of violence flooded news channels. Israel, caught off guard, responded swiftly and fiercely. The Israel Defense Forces, or IDF, launched airstrikes on Gaza, targeting Hamas positions. The conflict quickly escalated, turning into the deadliest in the region in years. The human cost of this violence has been devastating. Hundreds of Israelis and Palestinians, including civilians, have lost their lives. The attacks have left a trail of destruction in their wake, further deepening the divide between Israelis and Palestinians. As the conflict rages on, the international community grapples with finding a path to peace. The situation remains precarious, with no end in sight to the bloodshed. The world holds its breath, hoping for a swift resolution, but bracing for the possibility of further escalation. The Gaza Strip, home to over 2 million Palestinians, has become the epicenter of a humanitarian crisis. The Israeli blockade, in place for over 15 years, has already crippled Gaza's economy and severely restricted the movement of people and goods. The recent violence has only exacerbated the dire situation. The relentless Israeli airstrikes have destroyed essential infrastructure in Gaza. Hospitals, already struggling with limited resources, are overwhelmed with casualties. The power grid, already fragile, has been severely damaged, leaving many without electricity. Clean water and sanitation systems are on the verge of collapse. The humanitarian situation is reaching a breaking point. Food, medicine, and other essential supplies are running desperately low. Aid agencies are struggling to access Gaza, hampered by the ongoing violence and restrictions imposed by both Israel and Egypt. The international community has issued urgent calls for a humanitarian ceasefire to allow aid to reach those in desperate need. However, as the fighting continues, the people of Gaza are left trapped in a cycle of violence and despair. The international community has responded to the escalating crisis in the Middle East with a mixture of condemnation, concern, and calls for restraint. The United States, a staunch ally of Israel, has expressed unwavering support for Israel's right to defend itself while urging de-escalation. The European Union, while condemning Hamas's attacks, has also expressed deep concern over the humanitarian situation in Gaza and called for an immediate ceasefire. The EU has pledged significant financial aid to support humanitarian efforts in the region. The United Nations has been actively engaged in diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas. The UN Security Council has held multiple emergency meetings to address the crisis, but a unified response has been hampered by divisions among member states. Human rights organizations have condemned the violence on both sides and called for an end to the bloodshed. They have also criticized the Israeli blockade of Gaza, calling it a form of collective punishment that is exacerbating the humanitarian crisis. Section 4. Hezbollah and Iran adding fuel to the fire. The conflict between Israel and Hamas has raised concerns about a potential wider regional conflagration. Hezbollah, the powerful Iran-backed Shiite militant group based in Lebanon, has openly declared its support for Hamas and threatened retaliation against Israel. Israel has accused Iran of providing financial and military support to Hamas, a charge Tehran denies. However, Iran has made no secret of its hostility towards Israel and its support for Palestinian resistance groups. The involvement of Hezbollah and Iran in the conflict adds a dangerous dimension to an already volatile situation. Israel has carried out airstrikes against suspected Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, raising fears of a wider conflict. Hezbollah has responded by firing rockets into northern Israel. The possibility of a direct confrontation between Israel and Hezbollah, which last fought a devastating war in 2006, is a worrying prospect. The international community has urged all sides to exercise restraint and avoid actions that could lead to a wider conflict. However, the situation remains extremely tense and the risk of miscalculation or escalation is high. Section 5. A looming shadow, the US military presence. The United States, in a show of force and solidarity with Israel, has significantly increased its military presence in the region. The US Navy has deployed a carrier strike group to the eastern Mediterranean, and additional troops and military equipment have been sent to the region. The Biden administration has stated that the increased military presence is intended as a deterrent to further escalation and a message of support to Israel. However, some analysts fear that the US military buildup could have the opposite effect, increasing tensions and raising the stakes of the conflict. The presence of US forces in the region also raises concerns about the possibility of American entanglement in a wider conflict. While the Biden administration has ruled out direct US military intervention in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the situation remains fluid and unpredictable. The US military buildup in the Middle East is a stark reminder of the high stakes involved in the current crisis. It also highlights the complex geopolitical realities of the region and the challenges facing US policymakers as they navigate this volatile situation. Section 6. A glimmer of hope, diplomacy, and the path to peace. Amidst the escalating violence and mounting casualties, diplomatic efforts to broker a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas have intensified. Egypt, which has historically played a mediating role in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, has been actively engaged in shuttle diplomacy, shuttling between the two sides in an effort to find common ground. The United States, the European Union, and other key international actors have also been involved in diplomatic efforts, urging both sides to agree to a ceasefire and resume negotiations. However, deep mistrust and long-standing grievances between Israel and Hamas make finding a lasting solution extremely difficult. One of the key sticking points in negotiations is the issue of Hamas's demands for an end to the Israeli blockade of Gaza. Israel, for its part, insists that Hamas must first release the Israeli hostages it is holding and agree to disarm. Despite the challenges, the international community remains committed to finding a peaceful resolution to the conflict. The alternative, a protracted conflict with devastating humanitarian consequences and the risk of a wider regional war, is simply too dangerous to contemplate. Section 7. The road ahead. Navigating the risks of a wider conflict. The escalating conflict between Israel and Hamas has raised profound questions about the future of the Middle East and the potential for a wider regional conflagration. The involvement of Hezbollah and Iran, the increased US military presence, and the deep-seated grievances fueling the conflict all point to a volatile and unpredictable situation. The international community faces the daunting task of navigating this complex crisis while trying to prevent further escalation and address the urgent humanitarian needs of those caught in the crossfire. The path forward is fraught with challenges, but the pursuit of peace and stability in the region must remain a top priority. One of the key challenges is finding a way to address the underlying issues fueling the conflict, including the Israeli-Palestinian conflict and the role of external actors like Iran. This will require a concerted and sustained effort by all parties involved, as well as the international community. The road ahead is uncertain, but one thing is clear: the stakes are incredibly high and the consequences of failure are too grave to contemplate. The international community must work together to find a peaceful resolution to this crisis and prevent a wider conflagration that would have devastating consequences for the entire region and beyond.